Hello folks, Seamus here. I'm going to talk about how I do flats for digital coloring. And how I learned how to do digital coloring was from two cool books by Brian and Christy Miller. They founded Hi-Fi Color Design, and they actually color a lot of comics. And I've read a lot of their comics that they colored. And they have these two books that they put out called Hi-Fi Color for Comics and Master Digital Color. And they have they included scripts and actions, I believe, that helped out with setting up the line art for colors. But I'm going to show you how some of the techniques I learned and how you could do it without using the scripts that they included. So I did the previous video where I made the artwork or the line art completely black, and this is really good for the style of comics coloring that most modern comics do. If you're going to have a style that includes wash tones, ink washes, and stuff like that, this is not how you do it. This is only for line art that is completely black. So here's a Godzilla drawing I did. I really wanted to test out some textures using some cloth and dry brush, and using these new wide brushes that I bought, and also using China marker in the background here for this textured look. So I was just trying to test out some inking techniques. So the next process is doing flats, which can be time consuming. So I'm going to try to do this in real time so you can actually see how long it takes for me to do it. So I have the line art here on a background layer, and I like to double click on it and make it its own layer. I also like to use a lot of keystrokes, so I can't really explain the difference between the keystrokes. You have to learn that yourself basically in Photoshop. So I'm always switching the tools this way. You got to figure out how to I can't really explain what all the keystrokes that I use, short keys and stuff like that help me out, so I don't have to constantly be pressing over here looking for tools or having to go to the menus to do certain stuff. Like if I wanted to select all this white, I can press the wand tool, and then if I want to say fill it in with black, I use Option Delete, and that completely fills in the black. The Command Z, Option Command Z takes you back a step, so you can erase what you did. So there's a lot of short command keys and stuff that you got to learn in Photoshop if you're going to try to be fast. Okay, so I made this its own layer, and then I can get rid of the white by clicking on the white. Make sure that you have anti-alias off here, and you have contiguous off here, and 25 is good. But if your image is completely black and white, the tolerance shouldn't matter here. So make sure those two are off, then you select the white, and then you press delete, and you could see that all the white is gone, and this is the grid here shows the transparency in Photoshop. So Shift Command N makes a new layer, and I'll just call this white. And if you're gonna fill in the color in the background, there's a foreground color and a background color here. If you're gonna fill in white and I have it in the background, I use Command Delete to fill that in. So now we're back to having a completely white background with the black on its own layer. So after you have that, let me just rename this to line art. you select, I press command, I hold command, and then I press the image here on this layer in order to select all the black here. And basically that selects whatever this layer is. Any layer that you have, you can do that and it'll select it. So I want to make my own channel. Oh, you know what? You know what I did wrong? I forgot to put the mode. Okay, so whenever we made the line art, we changed the mode to grayscale, and that was just to make the inks a small file size. So you got to go back to coloring. You have to change it back the image mode to RGB color. And if you have layers set up and everything, this will pop up. So I just press don't merge. All right, we're in RGB color mode, and you'll see the channels here: RGB, red, green, and blue. And if you want to make sure that your line art doesn't change and you want to select it later, you can go to channel, new channel, and let's call it line art. I believe it's maybe selected area. Is that what? No. New channel. Masked area. No. Oh, okay, I know what I'm doing now. Go to channel, new channel, masked selected areas, alpha. We'll name it to line art. And then we have the line art selected. Then I press Command C to copy that, and you'll see I turn this on, and then I press Command V to post it here. Alright, what is this doing? Channel options. Maybe I'm supposed to select black. Let's rename this line art. Channel options 100%. Okay, that's what I did. Alright, you have a layer here. You select all the black. So I have the layer off now. You make your own channel here. And you got to make sure the color is black and the opacity is set to 100%. And then you copy your line art and then you paste it into the line art channel. And what that does is keeps the line art in its own channel here in case you accidentally do something to the layer of line art here itself, because it's very easy to accidentally, erase something or color over it and you don't realize it, and then later on you'll be like, well, how did this happen over here, and you don't know what you did. So you can just go back to here, select the line art. So this saves what was there before, and then you could Command V and paste back in. So did I do some? Okay, well, anyways. You don't have to set up your own line art channel here. This is just a way to select it later, just in case something happens. So I'll have that off. Okay. So what I'm going to do is make a new layer with Shift Command N, and I'll call it flats. So I have an empty layer here, and it's going to be the flat colors, and they'll be underneath the line art. So what I like to usually do is you choose a color, Option Delete to fill, and I start out like that. And then now here's the time-consuming part where I have to go and select each section of local color, a solid color that's going to be the basis for rendering, and that's why it's called flats, because you're choosing flat colors, huge sections of color. So I use the lasso tool, so I press L. I make sure that anti-alias is off here and feather is at 0 pixels. So what that does is when you do a lasso like that, it makes a hard edge line here. If you have anti-alias on, what happens is you get a more of a blurred look here, and you don't want that. You do not want this, because if you try to select, because what flatting is essentially is choosing sections of color, local color for different parts of the artwork, and later on when you're going to do your rendering, you're going to have to select each section. And what happens here is, wait a minute, maybe because it's so small. Let me try a larger anti-alias selection. So what happens later on, if you're trying to, you see there? It's not selecting that orange. And then later on, if you're starting to do rendering, this feathering edge to here, this feathered edge here is going to cause problems for you later on, and it'll be a headache. So make sure when you use the lasso tool, anti-alias is off, and when you use the wand tool, anti-alias is off, and contiguous is, that applies to a different thing. But for flatting colors, for choosing huge sections of things, I like to use the lasso tool, and you basically draw what you want to select. So what I did there was I took out a section. If you're using the lasso tool, it usually is automatically set to add, so anytime you, that's what this is over here. So if you choose that, it makes its own section each time. If you choose this over here, I forgot what these are called, but let's see. This adds to selection. So each time you draw, it'll add to your selection. So I like to keep it at that. If you select this, you take away sections, and if you select this, you only select the part in the middle. So I always keep it on to add to selection. Yeah, add to selection. You always keep that on, so it's always positive. There's always a little plus sign here. So then you start making your selection. And this is just a freehand, so you gotta be mindful when you make your selection. And I'm doing this in real time, so I'm going to see how long this video is going to be. But you got to learn how to use these short keys to speed up your process. So let's say you want to add something, and there's a long line, a long straight edge you could select, and it's kind of hard to keep your hand steady when you're trying to make a selection. So what you do is you start making a selection. So I clicked and I'm starting to make a selection, so I'm freehand now. But if you hold Option, you can start to make a straight edge selection. So if I'm still holding Option right now, and I'm just tapping so I can make a selection of this, and then once you let go of the Option key, it'll make, you know, that selection there. So I move between freehand. I'm not holding Option key now, I'm just freehand drawing. And then I move to, I start making a selection, then I hold Option, the Option key, and then I can click between selections. So you got to do that really quick. Like I'm holding Option key now. Okay, and I'm holding the space bar to bring the move tool so you can move the image. So I'm making a selection, freehand, and say I want to get rid of this little section here. Now if you don't start making a selection, you just have your, I'm using a Cintiq here, but same thing works for tablets, or yeah, tablets. So I hold the Option key now, and you can see this negative sign pop up. That means you're going to take away the selection. So I hold the Option key first, then I click, and then I'm freehand drawing, and I got rid of that selection there. So I can do this pretty quick. You got to learn how to do this quickly in order to try to. Alright, see, I messed up there, so Command Z takes you back. So let me just quickly select this section. So I got this little tail section there. So I actually want to make this darker. Like you can do flats and then choose your colors later on and change them. But I like to initially start with a good, alright, there, dark color. So you start selecting. So the whole point of flatting is to make it a lot easier for you to select sections of color later on, so you could do rendering. And you can see my previous videos where I do that. I made some flatting videos, I made some rendering videos, and I didn't add any audio of me explaining or talking, just music. I learned how to do a lot of this too from watching YouTube tutorials and seeing how other people work and do their process, and a lot of it is just studying what they do, and I didn't really have to listen to what they were saying because I'm more of a visual learner. So talking and trying to do this is a whole new experience for me, so I know I'm not a very interesting person to be explaining all this, but I like to learn from other people, and I wanted to explore making videos with me talking and seeing how long it takes for me to do a real-time video. I imagine this will probably be like over 20 minutes, 30 minutes long, I don't know exactly. So I try not to zoom in too close because no one's going to really notice if you go out of the lines. Sometimes you can get really anal and zoom in, you know, like zoom in that close, and then it takes a long time just to do that. But sometimes you do need to zoom in for detailed work, but find a good size for you to choose your sections of flats. So yeah, I like to just go on the edge here. Sometimes I even do this. I select a huge chunk of what I'm trying to flat. I'll fill that in. So you can see, I just need to do the edge here so I can be able to zoom in. And then it's just a matter of following the lines. I like to have YouTube videos in the background. I like to listen to music. I like to watch documentaries. Listen to podcasts. Something along that you can listen to without having to change, keep switching windows or keep switching apps or whatever, just to keep yourself occupied. Some people like to work in quiet. I generally like to have music or something informative in the background. Sometimes I like to watch movies, but it can be distracting if you're trying to follow the story or you're trying to look over and glance over at the screen. Unless it's a movie you've watched a billion times, like Godzilla. I'm a huge Godzilla fan. I grew up watching Godzilla since I was a kid. I don't even remember the first movie I watched. I'm sure my parents introduced me. I don't even remember what movie it was or whatever, but I do know that I did own, they bought for me, a VHS copy of Godzilla vs. Megalon. I remember owning Godzilla 1985, I believe. And those are my two influential Godzilla movies whenever I was younger. And my parents didn't have like a Blockbuster membership because Blockbuster was kind of expensive for us at that time. We had a local family-owned, maybe it was family, it was a small business video store, which didn't quite have the selection of Blockbuster, but they did have several Godzilla movies. So when I was younger, I was able to see some of the other old school Showa era Godzilla movies, but I've never got to see any of the 1990s Heisei era whenever they were coming out. I was born in 1986, so I got to, especially with the Heisei series, which is probably my favorite. Most of them weren't released in America when they first came out back in the early 90s. They didn't come out on video here until much later. So, alright, there we go. I have Godzilla completely selected. So I selected the background. I'm going to change it into a different color. Maybe a pinkish. Let's see how that looks. Yellow, maybe a different color. Let me see. Maybe orange. Yeah, I'll try orange. Okay. So now I'm going to select his eyes. So yeah, for this drawing, I was trying to mix the Heisei series Godzilla with, you can sort of see it in his face here, with the body and the texture of legendary Godzilla. I really like the way they did this chest and the abdomen and like the gills and stuff. I thought that was cool. And I sort of mixed it in with the Beast from 2000 Fathoms a little bit. The old school Ray Harryhausen flicks. Those are really cool. Okay, so I want to select these teeth, and I already have the flats for the Godzilla Gray. So this is where I could use the wand tool. So I press W for the wand tool, and then I make sure I have the minus sign here by pressing Option, and then I select the orange. So it selected the purple and I got rid of the orange selection. So now I can color the teeth. So I choose some kind of color. And for the flats, you actually want to choose, well, the way I like to work is to choose the darker shadow, because this will be the shadows, and then later on when I render, I only add the lighting. So let me color the inside of his mouth. So I'm going to choose the inside of his mouth here. And then again, get rid of the orange, unselect the teeth, and choose a color for the mouth. I think that's good. Okay, and yeah, to zoom completely out, I press Command 0. And to zoom in, I press Command plus. And to zoom out is Command minus. So it has to become secondhand nature for you to do all this, like pressing the space bar and moving the image, in order for you to quickly get around. So yeah, now I'm gonna just select the teeth now. So let me do this. So yeah, one of my vivid memories of is whenever Godzilla vs. Biollante came out, and my parents rented it, and it was new it came out in '89, and it came out in America probably like a couple years later, '91 or something, and my parents rented it from the small business place, I guess I was telling you about. And I came home from school. This is whenever I was like in kindergarten or first grade. And I came home from school, and they surprised me with, here's a new Godzilla movie. And I was totally, because the ending of Godzilla 1985, Godzilla jumps into a volcano, and it's implied that he died. So that really that broke my little kid heart. And I always, at that time I was wondering, are they going to ever make another Godzilla movie? He's dead. Are they going to bring him back? I didn't really know what they were going to do. So it was a total surprise when I came home that day and Godzilla vs. Biollante just came out. And I was really excited to watch it and everything. So it's actually one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite Godzilla movies. I like the way Godzilla looks in that one. He has a really cool face. It was the first time that the Heisei Godzilla face came out, and the Heisei design was starting to really fine-tune itself. And I actually think that's my favorite design in the Heisei series. He sort of switches up with each movie. They sort of redesign him slightly. So now I'm just going to do his dorsal spines, his back spines. So yeah, I just make huge sections like that, and I just make sure, I can get rid of the orange like that. And then Option Delete to fill it in, to make sure that you have your correct color here in the foreground box here. So, alright, there we go. And we're gonna color his nails, his talons. So I just make the selection like this. But yeah, I hope you've seen my other Godzilla videos I've done. I really enjoy drawing. drawing Godzilla. If I have nothing to draw, I usually, if I just want to sketch something and I don't have an idea of what I'm trying to draw, or I'm just trying to loosen up or something, Godzilla is one of my go-to subjects just to sketch out. Like this was a test in inking texture, so I didn't know what to draw, and I just figured Godzilla's skin is really scaly, and it's a perfect piece to test out your inking texture skills. Alright, this is where it's going to become the minutia of all these little fins and trying to figure out where the dorsal spines begin and where they end. So, okay. Yeah, I really enjoyed the Legendary Godzilla. I was super pumped that there was another American Godzilla besides the awful 1998 Geno Godzilla in name only. When that came out, I was disappointed. I did enjoy it. I did enjoy the movie as a monster movie, but as a Godzilla movie, it was a letdown. So whenever the news for the new Legendary Godzilla first started coming out, I got super hyped. And it actually made me start drawing Godzilla, because for a decade or whatever, I sort of just, didn't care for Godzilla or watched any of the Godzilla movies because I didn't know when, a new Godzilla movie was going to come out. So, the Legendary Godzilla definitely rekindled my Godzilla passion. So I'm excited for the sequels, and it'll be crazy to see Godzilla fight Kong again. Yeah, Godzilla vs. Kong was one of the other movies that I believe my parents bought for me. So I have good memories of that movie. Yeah, let's change his eyes a little bit darker. So I select his eyes. I'm going to do his pupils. I like to use a brush tool sometimes for instead of the select tool. But you got to make sure you have the hard edge. I have it set to dissolve mode up here, and that gives you that hard edge here. You could also use the pencil tool. The pencil tool leaves the hard edge, but I like this brush here from Kyle's brushes. Kyle T. Webster. You should check him out. I believe if you have the new Photoshop programs, they actually come with his brushes. So yeah, there's the complete flats. I'm gonna mess around with the background here. Yeah, coloring is a whole different skill compared to drawing, and you really have to have your own eye and style for what you're trying to, the type of theme or tone or atmosphere that you're trying to go for. And you just go in here and try to find. So yeah, like that. Maybe the teeth could be lighter. So if I press the wand tool and I have contiguous off, I can select all the flats here. So that's why flatting is so cool, and it makes selecting colors later on a lot easier. If I have contiguous on, it'll just select the one section of color that you're pressing on. So if I want to change all the color of his teeth, I select that. And if you want to hide your selection, I press Command H. So it's still selected here, but the crawling ants, I believe they're called, the selection edge is hidden. So I want to make this darker. I don't want it so saturated. Maybe I should have the same color as his dorsal fins. And then later on, when I render it, I can make them pop out more. So yeah, I definitely like to have darker colors for the flats, and then highlight with whenever I do the rendering, so it'll lighten the whole image. So generally, with the flats are darker, and then whenever I start rendering, I bring out the light. So I'm not happy with this background. Maybe, yeah. You gotta find a good contrast between your darks and lights, and that's how an image pops out. So yeah, there's flatting. And flatting will help out later on when I do rendering. So I believe that's it. I hope this helps out. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I can make another channel. And let's call this flats. So what you want to do, and that's how the flats look without the line art. So I want to save this flats in its own channel just in case I could select later on. So I press Command and I press the little image and it selects the whole thing. I go to channels, I click on the the flat channel I made, and I press Command V. Or no, wait, I'm sorry. Or wait, yeah. I forgot. Go back to your RGB flats. You select it all. Command C, so you copy it. I'll turn that off. Go to my flats, Command V, and it places it there. So that's just for later on. If I accidentally erase this flat layer, I can go back to my flat channel and choose the same sections just in case, but I turn that off. So these two are just in case something happens to the different files. So yeah, something happens to these layers, you can go to the channels and rework your way back. So in order to save, Shift Command S, save as. I save it as a TIFF. I have the image at 600 dpi. There are layers. When you save as a TIFF, you can save as these layers will be saved. Image compression, I leave at LZW. And then layer compression, I use zip for slower saves but smaller files. And I have a lot of color files on my computer, so storage space is pretty important. So I press OK. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video on color flats. Again, I suggest looking up hi-fi color design and learn from actual comic book colorists, but I hope you got some tips here. So be careful, be respectful, and especially be empathetic. Peace.
Bye.